What is up, everybody? Welcome back to Need for Speed Unbound, and my goodness, it has been a minute since I've been on this game, which I have a feeling most players have most likely put this game down by now, which is kind of unfortunate in many ways, but I'm sure many people are asking and also wondering, did Need for Speed Unbound actually fail? So now I do want to mention though, I don't actually hate Need for Speed Unbound, but I really do think this game's going to have some stuff to it that really made me scratch my head. It's also going to make a lot of players wonder if they actually should play the game and or even continuing playing it for that matter. So the first thing I did want to talk about, guys, I did see all over the place by other YouTubers and many people talking about it. That's going to be the end game on this game, single player for that matter. So honestly, multiplayer is a whole different discussion with this game, but when it comes to the overall single player end game for Need for Speed Unbound, I feel like there's a lot left to be desired. For one of the biggest issues I found with this was the fact that many people did find the game repetitive. I do want to know what you guys think about that in the comments below. Do you think the campaign on this game was any good? What Need for Speed game do you guys think had the best campaign and why? But at the same time, I also saw many people saying the campaign's going to be very cringy, and honestly, I can definitely see where you guys are coming from with that. I really wasn't that sucked into the campaign. I mean, sure, there were some cutscenes there where I was kind of listening and stuff, but I can definitely see where many people were saying it was going to be very cringy because I really lost focus on it. And one of the biggest things I noticed right off the bat with it was the fact that when you guys were playing the game on single player, I really do feel like after the second week, many people honestly got very bored. I also noticed this by looking into the trophies on PlayStation 5 as well, which is kind of insane considering it's around 20% of the player base that actually beat the final race in the game is probably going to say a lot to many people who might be wanting to get this. Most of the people could not even complete the campaign on the game because they most likely got bored and or they really just weren't feeling it. And then if you guys manage to actually beat the campaign, you then have to go into the end game quote unquote part of Need for Speed Unbound, which is terrible for that matter. For one, guys, you actually can't pick the events you really want to do when you're actually in the campaign. Fun fact, you can only do certain ones that are randomized every time, day or night. So if you guys actually want to make a lot of money, I noticed the most you could make during the day and or night, depending on what races you can go, is like 250k or so. You could obviously make a lot more depending on what the game wants to give you, like some of those time trial type of things, or like you have to run away from the police at nighttime, or you get some nice event that's like 80,000, which by the way, you have to spend like 36k to get into those races, so you're only really making like 50,000. So I think the overall math is not mathing right now with the way they actually designed this. The main reason why I'm kind of ranting right now, guys, is after I beat the game, I was feeling the exact same way as some other people and YouTubers as well. Like, I honestly had no desire whatsoever to really play this game after I beat it. I really didn't see a point of jumping into some of these events and trying to, farm some money, even though some of the cars are like, $3 million, like the Bugatti Chiron, and or, trying to do an engine swap that's like $500,000. So you obviously do need to make some money that way. I thought it would have been kind of cool if, maybe after beating the game, they could have gave us like different things to work toward and stuff like that, like in the weeks when you're playing. Instead, you're going to have a random calendar every time with the money that you make weekly. I really don't know why they did it this way. Like, they could have added different events that you could make extra money, and or maybe like every 2 weeks they could have did something where you can get like a free car from like a special event like the Grand. I think that would have made many players come back into the game and or continuing to play single player. I think this would have been a very good thing to have on the game because it most likely would have had many players actually want to complete the campaign. That way they might be able to get some free cars that way that they might have missed because they didn't have the right vehicles before. And having something like that would be similar to like the Summit on the Crew 2. It's most likely going to bring players back into the game, and this could obviously go into multiplayer as well. I really do feel like some of this stuff's going to tremendously help games with keeping the player bases up. I really do feel like many people are most likely going to drop off Need for Speed Unbound when the new Crew Motorfest releases, not only because it's going to be like a breath of fresh air for racing games, it's also going to have some insane vehicles in there as well, which I'm not going to get into. and I really feel like most players are most likely going to completely abandon Unbound when that game does release. Now, one thing you can also argue is the fact that Need for Speed Unbound is going to have the police chases and or like that police aspect to it, which is going to give you more risk like for the reward type of thing when doing nighttime and having like the 5-star wanted level or whatever. I guess I played too much GTA back in the day, but I feel like that's going to be really cool having the police in the game. It obviously is going to make it a lot more fun and or a lot more intense because I feel like many people buy Need for Speed for the police for that matter. But one thing I did see many people talking about is the fact that is there going to be too many police when you guys have a level 5 heat level? One thing I did notice is if you guys are driving a slower class vehicle, you're most likely going to be doomed trying to get rid of that Ford Raptor on level 5 heat. I have no clue what engine is in that thing, but my goodness, you're basically not going to be able to outrun it. One thing that is kind of hilarious is the fact that the police normally crash themselves anyway, and then with the helicopters basically spawning every couple of seconds out of nowhere, you guys will also notice that they sometimes disappear in a police chase. I still can't seem to figure out where they actually go, but at least you do manage to escape the cops in that aspect. I would say the biggest thing with the level 5 heat being like this with all the police is it makes it a lot harder to actually travel around the map if you guys want to. I would say if they dial them down just a little bit might make them a little bit more bearable. I'm very interested to see how they're going to do this with multiplayer because obviously guys, that's another thing I wanted to talk about. Multiplayer doesn't obviously have nighttime right now and or police either, so that's most likely going to play a role in Need for Speed Unbound's endgame as well because many people probably expected this stuff to come out on release. Not only that though, the last thing I did want to talk about guys is going to be the updates for Unbound as well. I'm not gonna lie, I would say everybody's pretty disappointed in the way we have gotten updates so far. You can also look at it as the fact of the updates coming out very slowly and most people are probably getting kind of tired of that. Considering we are now in February and this game has been out about 3 months now almost, which is kind of insane to think about. And the only update we've actually gotten on the game did end up nerfing the Regera and or the Golf GTI, which in return basically just made the overall speed of a hypercar much slower, which I really don't know why they did not just make the cars into their own separate classes, but that's honestly a different topic. I feel like the updates with this game and the way they are being handled is kind of a disappointment. I feel like many people are most likely going to agree with that as well, and the first thing that came to my mind with Unbound and its updates, guys, is going to be Dakar Desert Rally. Now, don't get me wrong though, Dakar Desert Rally is definitely going to be far from perfect, but at least it was getting a lot more updates in that aspect of trying to fix it. I really do give them credit with that, at least they were trying to add things
Yo,
to the
that shit is
game.
tight.
Apparently the
You did
first
your
big
thing
update
out
for
there.
Need for Speed Unbound is supposed to be in March, so hopefully that update's going to be absolutely insane and bring us lots of content and or stuff to do on the game because we're going to be like 4 months in. And if they add like nighttime indoor police to multiplayer and like 1 or 2 vehicles and that's basically it, that might be kind of cool for a little bit, but after a couple of weeks, I'm sure many people are going to go, well, I think we're going to move over to something else, and I really don't want to say this, guys, but I have a really weird feeling the single player is probably not going to get much more love at all. I feel like when it comes to like grinding money out and like doing the events the way they did it, they're most likely not going to change any of that stuff in the near future. At least I hope I'm wrong on that. I feel like if single player was just a little bit better with the way it was designed, it might give people more of a desire to actually play it. I feel like most people just dropped it after like the second week in the game, which is really sad considering you really don't have a reason to play that. And I also feel like in some ways separating the multiplayer from single player with like making money was also kind of a dumb decision. I do want to know what you guys think about that in the comments below. I feel like they should have kept it the same like it was in Heat, because who actually wants to grind races out twice and or go after money and stuff like that twice? But I guess in some ways they probably designed it like that on purpose to separate the multiplayer from the single player. That way when they actually update the game, which I have a feeling is most likely going to be aimed toward multiplayer, they don't have to worry about fixing single player in the same time as that. But again guys, I really hope I'm wrong on that, but let me know your thoughts of Need for Speed Unbound in the comments below. I do have a lot of hope left that Need for Speed Unbound can turn around for the better, but let me know what you guys think about this game in the comments below, and do you think Need for Speed Unbound really did fail?